but it's cool to see all these great ideas being shared, and you're starting to see some common themes come up from the speakers, and you'll see some in mine as well. So the first is my buddy and coworker Mitch and I were serving the 90-minute sort of liquid courage up there this morning, and it works perfectly with the theme today. And the first idea is called making a good idea even better by making it your own. So taking something that's stayed and expected in your business. In the case of IPAs, that's intense hoppiness, and traditionally hops are added once early in a beer for bitter, once late for aroma. We converted an old vibrating football game and figured out a way to continually dose the beer with hops as they vibrate down the football game into the boiling beer, and it makes for a beer that's extremely hoppy without being crushingly bitter. We were the first to do that in our industry and are still known for that innovation of continual hopping, but it was just our take on what was a very traditional component of the brewing process. Second would be encouraging innovation and collaboration with no pride of authorship. I think as entrepreneurs, when you have to go up against Goliath, you have to be super proud of your work, believe in it, but to grow a company, you have to have the humility to recognize that you can only be great at so many things, and having the humility to know what areas you're not great at your business, and enticing folks with those complementary superpowers to join you on your business is what makes an entrepreneur grow and sustain a business. In the case of our example, we do a beer called Lupa Luau IPA, a coconut IPA, and the idea was born. We stop our work at Dogfish Head one day every year, and we go out and build houses for Habitat for Humanity, and we get paired with different people in our company that we don't often get to work with on a daily basis. I was building houses on a very hot day with my coworker, a chef named Emily. I'm Italian descent, so I got pretty dark skin. She's Polish and had very light, and she comes up to me after the day and says, "Sam, you got a lot of color today." I'm like, "Yeah, Emily, you look like you had a lot of fun." And and she said, "Just say it, Sam. I'm pale as fuck." I can't say it. And I was like, "Pale as fuck. That's a really good beer name." And we went on a journey where Emily's like, "Well, I got coconut flakes in the kitchen." And I was like, "Oh my God, I got a dehydrated coconut powder up at my desk that a company left us to trial." And our brewer was next to us and said, "Somebody sent me these hops that they couldn't use because they didn't smell citrusy. They smelled like coconut." That whole idea came together collectively with different people in each department, and we celebrated that was a collective idea as we released Lupa Luau. The next is stop and smell the hops, which is making sure that even in your workplace, you're taking the times to step out of your silo, your workload, and spend social time with other people in your company, learning what's important to them and learning from them. For that one, the example is we do a beer called Namaste White. We found out a Belgian brewer friend of ours lost all their electricity, and their beer went down the drain, and we were all bummed out. We were drinking their beer and said, "Why don't we, instead of just drinking it, brew a beer and give the profits from the first batch to that little brewery in Belgium as an homage?" So we do a beer called Namaste, which means the spirit in me celebrates the spirit in you, a Belgian-style beer that was inspired by that issue that they had at Tre Fontaine Brewery, and it's today one of our best-selling beers, so a lot of karma in that ability to give back. Next would be you've identified the what, embrace the why and the how. So we challenged ourselves to brew. The what was, let's brew the most thirst-quenching beer Dogfish Head has ever brewed. And we actually got the kismet. We were down at NASCAR, and Jeff Gordon's a big beer geek, and he was showing me around his car, and I said, "What's that tube sticking in your window?" And he said, "That's where they pipe in my special Gatorade." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. You got to pick the color." And he's like, "No, they actually pulled the fluids out of my body at 140 degrees or 140 miles an hour, 110 degrees, and they designed a liquid that was perfectly built to my physiology while I race." I was like, "Holy shit, can I talk to those scientists?" And so from that moment, the beer Sea Quench Ale was born, which has twice the electrolytes and minerals of Gatorade and is a very thirst-quenching beer. Next would be the idea of having fun and taking your work seriously, but not taking yourselves too seriously, as I think you can see we do at Dogfish. We do a beer called Super 8, where we took a subjective idea, if you were stuck on a desert island, what beer would you bring if you only had one? And how do we make that objective? And we made a beer that was the most nutrient-rich beer in the world, so that if you were stuck in a desert island, there was no choice which beer you would have. It came wrapped in an emergency silver blanket with a jackknife around the top of it for the zombie apocalypse. So that one was a fun experience in saying, let's have fun with this, but let's go to the molecular level of science with it. Next would be listen to the marketplace, but be a leader, not a copycat. So with our company, we have this mission statement based around this Emerson quote about an exploration of goodness. And in essence, it's just saying, don't follow what already exists in the world, go on your own journey. And if it's a valid journey, people will join you on it. And that's been a big part of our success at Dogfish. Seventh would be look to history for creative inspiration instead of looking to the future for the next best thing. Everyone seems to be focused on the new thing. We work with archaeologists at molecular archaeologists and historians to revive ancient beers and bring them back. And they're very evocative, beautiful liquids, but they existed thousands of years ago. So look in your industry to find who the leaders were. Google who the leaders were 50, 100 years ago. Go find used books and papers on them and see if there are beautiful ideas that can be resurrected from the past with a new creative spin. Eighth, risk-taking and sustainability. Take more risks, but fail forward. Dogfish has brewed thousands of beers, different beers over the last 25 years. Only dozens of them have been successful, but we learn from every one of those challenges. Ninth, be inspired by creativity and originality. So find patron saints outside your industry that inspire you. For me, that's folks like Andy Warhol or Miles Davis. And I got to do a beer with Miles Davis and his family, and his nephew played on the album Bitches Brew. And I asked his nephew, well, why do you think your uncle became who he was and such an iconic figure? And he said, my uncle once said, don't play what's there, play what's not there. And that's a beautiful distillation of what makes a great entrepreneur and business person. Last would be make a connection and try to make connections. We all have our key demographics, but when you're thinking about trying to find your demo for a product, also see if there's a way you can do it that can have a universal appeal. For us, we have a beer that just came out called American Beauty that we do with Grateful Dead, that band, and it's a beer that's made with granola and honey, and it appeals to hippies and music lovers, but it's an amazing thing to see that a band like the Grateful Dead can appeal to a 22-year-old that's into John Mayer just as much as a 55-year-old that was into Jerry Garcia. So those are my 10 ideas. I hope you found a useful nugget in there. Thank you.